Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to another WWT Expert session. My name is Matthew Coble. I'll be your host today, and today we'll be talking about artificial intelligence and the customer experience with WWT expert Tim Brooks. Tim is a leader in WWT's solutions consulting and engineering practice, and he consults regularly with our clients on AI, machine learning, advanced analytics, and enterprise architecture solutions. Tim led the team that earned Worldwide Technology NVIDIA's AI Solution Partner of the Year for several years, and he's currently editor-at-large for Chief Data Officer magazine. Also germane to today's conversation, Tim has extensive experience in the hospitality industry with brands like Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, Mandarin Oriental. So, you know, AI, CX, we're talking to the right guy. Hey, so welcome, Tim Brooks, man, we're glad you're here.
Hey, Matt, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Well, look, let's jump right in. So we know leaders today want to become more data-driven, and at the same time, they're also prioritizing the customer experience in 2023 and really beyond. What is the relationship between these two priorities, and how can data and AI really drive forward customer experience?
Oh, so many ways. First is a recognition that data is perhaps your most important asset in terms of understanding your customer, understanding their preferences, and delivering to them an enhanced experience that's personalized to them rather than to a cohort. So the data quality that you maintain and the data governance that you have in place is probably the biggest step. So you've got to have enough data, and it's got to be of good quality in order to understand your customer better. And then moving toward an understanding of the customer helps you deliver a product or a service to that customer in their own context. By that I mean what they want, when they want it, how they want it, and at a price that's been determined through data rather than through trial and error or gut. So these are ways that customers are currently using, organizations are currently using AI and advanced data analytics to enhance the customer experience. Now, what does that mean? In areas like, you know, your favorite streaming service, be it audio or be it video, it's personalized recommendations. There's a reason when you log in as an individual, and you can log in across things like family members and other ways where they didn't know your preferences versus preferences of other users with, for example, the same IP address. That's helped accelerate growth and provide stickiness for those organizations that can provide that to their customers. This also applies to things like wealth advisors. So if you're in the wealth advisory business, either through wealth advisors speaking to customers or through direct to customer platforms, you want to enhance their experience by giving them recommendations that are meaningful to them in the context of their own financial decisions. That's a concept called precision finance. We can extend that to other areas such as precision marketing to those customers, or even in B2B context, when we're selling something, knowing what is likely to be sold to that enterprise customer when they want it or attached to another thing that they may have already purchased or considered. These are all very valuable uses of enhanced data, analytics, and in some cases, artificial intelligence to improve the customer experience.
All right, well, Tim, everybody at this point is familiar with ChatGPT, right? We're all hearing about it all over the media, and it's really had the fastest adoption by 100 million users in the history of technology, right? Totally stormed the market. But how should organizations really approach GPT relative to their customer experiences?
I would recommend at this point a level of caution, and I think, and let me phrase that in a couple of ways. One, the opportunity is immense. The promise of generative AI and GPT, just in case you aren't already aware, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. Yep. And what that is a neural network technique that takes data and then synthesizes it into a probability of what would be the next word, context, phrase, or thought, we call it a thought, in a sentence. It is limited in its creation by OpenAI and ChatGPT to data it was trained on through 2021, which is when training ended. And what that means for businesses, for enterprises, is it's limited to those things on the internet in which it was trained, which was largely the corpus of data. It was an immense corpus of data. That's different from training that model on your own data, your own knowledge share, your own wisdom across all of the documents, emails, things like that within your organization. So that's my number one caution on ChatGPT. There's another version of this, though, called GPT-4, which is multimodal, which has come together in the last several months. And then now Microsoft primarily is using this in something they call Copilot. That is very effective. And it's effective, again, on that which it was trained on. So you can go forward with something like that trained on your own data. It will take a while, but it can be over time very, very effective. The cautions I give are that in some cases, the responses provided by ChatGPT and even in our testing of GPT-4 sometimes do what's called in data science hallucinate. In other words, they're providing an answer which is not true or which is fanciful or which is not in the context of the question that was asked. Now, this is not unusual. It requires some training, what's called human in the loop. And these are humans that help refine it. So for those of you that have used ChatGPT, you'll notice that they're often asked to regenerate a response. And then you're asked if that was an improvement in the response or if it was a worse response. What you're doing is helping ChatGPT train itself in that process. Just like any new employee, if you think of generative AI as a new, bright, wonderful, smart employee who just doesn't know your business yet, it requires training and onboarding in order to be effective. So if you have the ability to do that, put governance around it, limit it to those things which it's good at answering, and restricting it from those areas which may be more critical, then I think you've got a good way to use generative AI. But for example, I might use that internally as a performance enhancing technology, as a productivity tool. But at this time, I would caution against using it for things like patient recommendations, medical recommendations, things of that nature, because that is too important, too much at risk. And frankly, doctors do a much better job of that than any AI program can do right now.
Well, GPT is certainly hot, and that's kind of what a lot of us are talking about right now. But there are a lot of different ways that AI can be used to improve the customer experience. Can you speak to some others that are out there in the market that we see today?
Yeah, there's a great deal of work in what is called, as we mentioned earlier, precision marketing and in things like precision finance. And all of these are tied toward having data about each of us individually. And generally, that's through an app. You can also replicate that in the online experience through a portal. But most of what we do around app also then will enable permissions about things like geolocation and some other sort of data sharing, which you agree to when you sign up for that application. That enables a far better insight into the customer experience and what customers would want. So this goes through things like quick service restaurants. If you look at, something many of us probably have, a Starbucks app or an app from another great store like Panera, it enables them to have insight into what might be a reasonable thing to attach to that order. It also helps with their in-store operations to enable better forecasting and operations within the context of each individual store, because one in Idaho might be different from one in Alabama. And these are very important and valuable insights that can drive store operations, what they buy, what the menu choices are, what gets proposed to you as something to attach to your item at sale. All of these enable better customer experiences, and in some cases they increase profitability, they improve margins, and they assist with top-line revenues.
Well, Tim, I know that you and our team here at Worldwide Technology do a lot of work with clients around AI. I wonder if you can tell us some real-life examples of the ways that we are actually working with our clients to use AI to successfully kind of improve their customer experiences out in the market.
Yeah, there's a good bit of work on things as diverse as mining, which is probably one of the world's oldest industries. I mean, mining has pretty much remained the same for 5,000 years until about the last 10, 15 years when data from all the sensors on heavy equipment, on rock crushers, on all the different pieces of capital equipment that run around a mine, and I'm thinking, large mines, they come together to provide a coherent view of operations, and that enhances operational efficiency. And we've created, together with our customers, some solutions which improve safety. They improve equipment uptime, which is very, very important in something like mining, and improve essentially their ability to identify where and how to operate the mine to maximize efficiency. And we did this through artificial intelligence, through things like computer vision, through other things that provide, through log data and data from a variety of different sensors aggregated together to give a very good sort of digital twin of the operational context of each mine. And given that mines are distributed globally here on planet Earth in different areas, some are deserts, some are wet, it's good to have a real understanding of how each of those mines operate, because it's not a static operating environment. It's very dynamic. It changes almost every day with the weather or the way the mine is operated. And something like a digital twin of that enables a great deal of insight into where to go next, what to do next, and what are the implications of it. That's a pretty good one, which isn't, you wouldn't think of that ordinarily as customer experience, but it certainly is employee experience when it involves their safety, their productivity, and their efficiency.
Yeah, and I know that, often that customer experience and employee experience really need to work together to deliver, the right outcomes that businesses are seeking. And I do want to dig in a little bit more around this question, right? So I think that, we hear in the market, and you're working with clients all the time, that, we're going to lose jobs, right? That, jobs are going to go away, artificial intelligence is going to replace people, but that might be a misconception, because others may say, no, it's going to create new opportunities for humans to do different and better work. What's your thoughts about that?
If you look through history, Matt, with every major paradigm shift in technology, you go back as far as the printing press, which eliminated priesthoods as the curators of all knowledge and democratized and distributed information more broadly. Then you look at classically the Luddites, who resisted the mechanical loom, and then that led to manual looming. It was no longer a thing, but a vast industrial revolution that created the ability for us to wear comfortable clothing more broadly across different parts of the globe. Then you look at what about the rise of computers, the rise of internet? I mean, through each innovation, there has been concern about what jobs are destroyed. But each time, more jobs, new and different jobs, have been created. So, for example, this is one that's important to me. Way back when, my own mother was a key punch operator, which is how computers were coded through a series of cards. Her job and the jobs of her colleagues were, of course, eliminated by the late 70s. But it gave to a rise of software, and software engineering came about. With the rise of generative AI, some aspects of software engineering will, of course, lose jobs. But the quality and the productivity of software engineering as a discipline will increase. When it comes to generative AI, we're already finding that a new job for people is what's called prompt engineering. The quality of the response from something like GPT-4 and ChatGPT is directly related to the quality of the query. And high quality queries provide much better responses, and organizing those queries helps you get the information you need faster and in line with your expectations. And this is an unusual thing. It's different for our minds. We're so used to using search engines and saying things like, find me best restaurant in St. Louis, and up pops a list of different choices with different ratings by it, versus a more human-like quality, which is, hey, where do you like to go for Italian food in St. Louis? And up would come in a more, natural way, a list of recommendations and maybe why those recommendations came about. That's a simple consumer use. When it comes to enterprise use, though, if I'm looking across legal briefs as a law firm, or if I'm a consulting firm and I'm looking for the best version of some best practice or transformational change that we have consulted on before in a comparable industry or situation, I really need to nail my prompts in order to get the most useful information relevant in the context to which I need to apply it. That's a new job. That job didn't exist until, I don't know, 2 months ago. And now more and more that's increasingly in demand. So there's just one example. I think that, yes, there will be some jobs that will go away. Manual tasks, things that are very dangerous. One that occurs to me is something like window washing. Robots are perfectly suited to do that. And that's a dangerous occupation for many people. So this all becomes sort of an academic thought experiment, boardrooms and to strategic folks and C-levels until, as some folks have said, what about if 20 to 30 years from now, it's a possibility that AI eliminates the job of the CFO. Now that really does hit home, and we need to be thoughtful about which of these roles and occupations are very critical and which are those which can be improved through the use of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I like that optimistic point of view, Tim, and I agree with you. I think jobs will be eliminated, but new jobs will be created, and the net result will be probably a better human experience. So, look, I know a lot of organizations out there probably started working on AI, but we may have people tune in today thinking like, this sounds great. Like, how do I get started? So, how do you counsel clients who are thinking about this to get underway with their AI work?
Well, the best time to start on AI was probably 5 years ago, and the next best time to start is tomorrow. The reason for this is the quality of the data, the sufficiency of the data are really what's incredibly important to this. Without a great deal of data, the relevant data and good data quality, you can't trust what something like generative AI will create. You can't even trust what you might pull from the data in terms of predictive insights. If you looked at it across a spectrum from the simplest, which is to inform, this is what most companies do today, is they use business intelligence or some form of descriptive analytics to inform their decisions going forward. The reason that analytics exist is so we can make better decisions about things in the future which are uncertain. So that's job one. You've got to be in a position to do that. I think most enterprises today are in that position. The next one is to augment human decision making. How do we do that? We build models, or we have AI come up with models based upon pattern recognition or upon computer vision, upon other techniques that it uses to suggest courses of action. And then what we do is we make smarter decisions using that, and we then refine it using human input into the model to determine if it was a good recommendation, a poor recommendation, can it be improved? Thus, we've put a learning loop together, which helps improve the performance of AI. The final part in the spectrum is to automate certain decisions which tend toward automation, regular repetitive tasks, manual tasks, things that are going to be either not as critical with human judgment, because AI does not do judgment. AI does information retrieval and suggestions, and AI can put together the probability of something going on. But when it comes to judgment, humans are far better suited to get that done. But that next level for automation, certainly for routine tasks, and you see this now more and more in organizations with things like IT tickets and the operations of their networks and other things which need either very, very rapid movement or lend themselves to automation. They're moving in that direction. You need great data quality, you need a great deal of data, and you need to take time to train those models and test them before you deploy them as part of your business. Our group specializes in that area, which is to help with data governance, data engineering, data science, and then how that data is reported either through software, through automation, or through enhanced decision triggers, visualization, let's say, so that folks can make smarter decisions about the right things using data that they trust.
Well, Tim, I want to drill in just a little bit on this and speak to, customer experience. If we're addressing organizations that are thinking about, adding AI into their customer experience, processes and solutions, is it better to do that like incrementally, small bits at a time, or kind of really go all in on it all at once and move forward like that?
It's a big investment. There's the use case approach, which does work so long as those use cases tend to be foundational towards your strategic mission. So let's say, just at a very high level, your strategic mission is, let's make all of our key decision makers smarter by augmenting their performance with AI generated recommendations that they then have the freedom to either say yes to or to push back on and help to retrain the model. That would be one sort of strategic value. How do we collectively raise the tide of all of our decisions through collectivizing the intelligence in a knowledge share? Great. That's a great goal. A lot of companies share that goal. But how do we get there? What are the foundational steps that we take? Well, one is around governance. Another's are around what's the architecture for making those decisions? How many of those decisions need to be made quickly based upon real-time data versus a batch sort of methodology, which is what many companies do for most of their decisions? How many of those decisions are made more broadly, or how many of those decisions need to be retained simply by mid-level or senior level executives? How many of those decisions can we put in the hands of our frontline employees in retail? How many of those decisions can we put in the hands of our frontline caregivers and clinicians in healthcare context? Versus how many of those decisions need to be made by a handful of more experienced people or people with certain levels of certifications? Those are important questions around how the culture goes forward with those decisions. And this is an area that I think that in the rush to perform use cases, sometimes those foundational steps get skipped. You can still get there as long as you're iterating toward that North Star of let's democratize that decision making. Let's lift our collective intelligence a little higher. Let's share knowledge more freely amongst ourselves or with our customers. But you've got to start somewhere. So selecting those first use cases is really important if you're just getting started.
All right, Tim. Well, organizations are definitely thinking about how to put AI into their operations. But we at Worldwide Technology also know that has implications to the infrastructure that organizations have. So what sorts of infrastructure decisions do organizations need to be making to be ready for the AI stuff that's to come in the future?
Yeah, great question, Matt, because it's about the data, and when it comes to the infrastructure required, we're talking an explosion of data. So each time in AI in particular, and in some of these generative models, an inquiry is made, the data load, the metadata from that, the learning from that, what's called the learning loop, and the results of inference for that increase. The data, the model is retrained each time. It's wonderful because unlike knowledge retained by various employees, which rides around in all our heads, this is then collectivized and it never forgets, it never has a sick day, it's always on. And so all of that information is retained. But what that means for organizations is a massive amount of compute resources. The good news is per petaflop or per, however you want to price it, the cost of compute is, of course, far, far less expensive than it was years ago. I mean, this is Moore's Law, and although, some contend that it's dying, it still does apply. The cost per compute resource has continued to decline. The cost per storage is also, relatively, not relatively flat or continuing to decline. Where this gets interesting is the infrastructure around your architecture and networking. You're going to need big pipes in order to feed the large compute resources that are starving for data in order to do their job and create these models and produce AI solutions. So that's one very big impact is along network performance, both in terms of bandwidth as well as the integrity of the network, because that's going to be critical. The other part is around the right sort of architecture that you're going to use. Again, streaming versus batch. What does that look like for those decisions? And you see a lot of that going on these days with data engineering. Sometimes we see this as as limited sort of data engineering that's done tactically. I think if there's a strategic vision for what does that architecture want to look like in a hybrid environment, cloud, on-prem, whatever that means for in each organization, that's really important. There is some data which you don't want outside of your organization. So if you think about your crown jewels, maybe some of that remains, or all of that remains on-prem or in a more restricted capability. And other data that you don't mind, either in the cloud or how the compute is accessed. So these are important considerations for organizations, but what I think it means is for generative AI, you're going to see, of course, because of the massive amount of compute resources and agility permitted by cloud providers, you're going to see a continued move to the cloud. But then for some organizations that create their own sort of internal models that are the crown jewels of that organization, some of that may remain in-house, and there could be an expansion of their on-prem again. So this goes through various cycles depending on the needs of each organization. But it's an important thing to understand when you're going into AI is it does have infrastructure implications for your company.
Well, Tim, I always like to wrap these sessions by asking our experts to look to the future. So if you look ahead at the coming years, what are you most excited about to see with AI and customer experience?
I think we're looking at much more individualized treatment of customers, and we're also looking at an issue related to things like data privacy. That's going to continue to be an issue, and then the exchange of data. Another area to look at in terms of how we interact with things in customer experiences, are we moving to a subscription-based model? Are we going to continue to do, as most of the internet is, sort of an advertising-based model? Advertising-based revenue models, lead to sometimes a conflict with the individual around what is it that about my data that I can share, want to share, and what's the value exchange for me individually between that. Other models which are around customer experience, which seem to work really well, are targeted offers and campaigns based on individualized behavior rather than based upon how much inventory do I have left to sell this month. Another area for customer experience to be better informed is around pricing. What is the sort of pricing I need to offer either to this individual, to this region, across this product? And I know that sounds like a level of what I'd call discriminatory pricing, but that happens already today when you go to purchase something like a ticket to an event, a concert, a sporting event, a rental car, a hotel room, a cruise line. All of these practice this concept known as dynamic pricing. Individually, there's an ability in the customer experience to determine what is the right pricing, the right discount, the right attachment to an individual that will lead to greater loyalty, greater revenue lift. All those sorts of things are possible with better data and insights. AI helps that because it can do this just at massive scale and again provide recommendations that augment our decisions about how to treat our customers. I think the more that we can be treated as individuals, the better it's going to be for stickiness for those companies that elect to use AI to improve customer experience.
Well, Tim, always a pleasure to talk with you. I always leave with a couple nuggets that I'll be thinking about for the rest of the day. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here.
And thank you for joining us as well. This has been another WWT Experts session. We've got a great back catalog out on our website and plenty more planned for the future. So head to wwt.com/events and check it out. Thanks for coming this time, and we'll see you again next time.